we break down the latest trends, threats, technologies in cybersecurity, helping you stay one step ahead and cyber-wise. Our guest today is Matt Hamilton, Director Global Solutions Factory with TD SYNNEX. Welcome to the program, Matt. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on today, guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is a special episode for us over at or here at the CyberWise guys.
Very special episode.
Yep. Because today it's not just talking, right? We're gonna ask you, Matt, to demo a new service, if you will. I don't want to call it a solution, but I would leave it to our viewers and listeners to decide how they want to call it. But TD SYNNEX is coming up with a new service called SecOps Dashboard, and I would love for you to share a little bit about where it started, why, and pretty much what it is, right? I think our listeners would be very interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So SecOps kind of started about 3 years ago. We originally had a large number of cases where we were seeing channel partners and end customers having issues with crypto jacking. Wasn't crazy advanced stuff. I think most of it was like people accidentally published passwords, keys, things like that to GitHub repositories, compromised IDs, using your global admin login on other websites, and they had a breach. And so a lot of it seemed to be just kind of like scraping those kind of passwords and then just running some basic scripts that would spin up VMs and incur, some of the worst cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost. And, when we did a lot of investigations, we were on support calls all the time, and in talking to a lot of the partners and end customers, they were having issues where people were turning off MFA. They didn't have like geo restrictions set up. Really just what, a lot of us would think of as like basic hygiene protocol. We were finding was happening out there. And, even some of it was like in shadow IT accounts that people had set up, they didn't even recall, hadn't looked at in a couple of years. And so we started doing some polling, looking at like customers' policies and settings and investigating. And we were finding that like over half of the accounts that were out there had unenforced MFA. And we saw Microsoft do a few things, right, to try and they did mandatory security defaults, and they pushed a lot of security changes that improved that landscape. But what we saw was that didn't do anything to address things like geo restriction, to address other security threats that partners and end customers might be facing. So we built our own solution for that. We ended up deploying a few thousand of them, and then one of our partners one day asked us, like, "Hey, could you guys just turn this into a portal so I can see this stuff and do the deployments in bulk for my customers?" And so that's kind of how we arrived here.
Wonderful. So I've mentioned earlier the name is SecOps Dashboard. How is that going to be available for TD SYNNEX customers or partners, I should say?
Yeah, so it's available on our StreamOne Ion and Stellar platforms. So you'll go directly into the normal portal where you manage your Microsoft products, and then underneath that reporting tab in those platforms, you'll be able to see the SecOps portal, and that'll give you an overall security posture of your end customers. And you can do a few cool things, which we'll show in the demo, like deploy templates, configure settings, policies. And then also we have a lightweight recommended products page that we're going to be enhancing over the next few sprints and looking for partner feedback.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, can you show us around and
yeah, let's take a look.
Play with it a little bit so we can grill you with some questions?
Yeah, of course. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, and so you should be able to see my screen now. So we're looking at StreamOne Ion in this view. So first thing you'll notice, right, as a partner, you'll come in, do reports, and then you'll go under the SecOps page. There's a few main blocks here. So our first one tracks all of my aggregated secure score. So for this demo, we're using some customers. They're not real end customers. They're ones we've set up. We've given them a pretty bad security posture, and we'll be able to see like what kind of data you can get out of that. So I have 6 in this one. And so here I can see over time, right, I've got real world scenario. We set some accounts up, we're reporting on them, and then we see a rapid decrease in our overall secure score. And that's because we've turned off MFA in some of these accounts. And that's one of the first things that'll tank your secure score. That has quite a bit of weight. Few other things that can weigh into secure score are like your policies, your restrictions, and a few different security tools that you have turned on. Next thing we'll see down below is our risk level. So this is an inverse of our secure score, but this kind of lets us see if we look at our customers from like who's doing really well, right? They've got an 80% plus on their secure score, who's kind of in my medium zone where I can make a few improvements. And then the first people I want to call obviously is going to be the high risk ones because they've just kind of shut everything off, skirted all the rules, and they're kind of operating on their own planet. So that lets you quickly reference those. So I'll show you a view of those in a second. Our next area to look at is our critical security recommendations. So we sort these by how well you're doing in an aggregate scale. One of the things I like about this when we talk to partners, a lot of them don't have things like Lighthouse deployed at scale through their partner center, managing all of their end customers, doing policies at bulk and scale, right? So if you're doing that as a partner, you're probably a bit beyond what we're going to be providing for this tool. This is for the other 80% of our partners that still haven't worked with Lighthouse and deployed things at scale. They're not an MSP. They're not an MSSP. This is for those type of partners so that you can secure that front door in an easy way without having to make like major business and operational changes to accommodate those things. And you can see here, right, I've got no firewalls. I still am allowing legacy authentication in all my accounts. I don't have risky user policies, but I'm doing good. I've enabled self-service password reset. I've got some budgets, right? And then in a couple of accounts, I've got all my MFA enabled. So you can kind of get a general idea of like what are the biggest threats you're facing as a partner and like where you maybe need to do some cleanup and standardization based on the greatest hits for securing the front door. And then, we don't want to call this the wall of shame, but this is where you can see your highest risk customers. So anyone that's listed as high risk will show up here and we're showing them in order. So we'll pick on Fadel today. They're paying for some premium licenses in this scenario, but they're not using any of those settings or configurations, which is a surprisingly real world scenario. People will pay for P1 and P2 to cover all of their end customers, then they won't use conditional access or risky login restrictions. So really good conversation to have if you're a partner with your end user, especially from a value standpoint, because you're already coming in and explaining to them like, hey, you guys are using this, you're paying for this, you need to activate some of these more advanced features and kind of here's why and here's what I can do for you. Couple other things is just recommending always P1 and P2. So we can click those and go through the normal purchase process. I'm not going to do a procurement demo today because it's about as easy as adding stuff to a cart and buying it on Amazon. So there's nothing too special there. And then the last thing, we got a lot of feature requests for this. We didn't include it in the original, but partners just wanted a quick way to reference. Like when I log into the portal, I take a quick look at this and I can see if I've got customers that are exceeding budget that was set or are expected to exceed the budget. We've seen a lot of that where, not only from a security standpoint, if you're exceeding by 50K over what you set, right, there's probably a security incident versus just that they've deployed additional workloads and I need to have a budget conversation. So that'll flag your customers that are facing that issue at the moment. So next thing we can do, guys, is we can take a look at some of those high-risk customers. So I can directly see them here, or I can actually go into the all customer view, but let's just pick on my high-risk ones, right? So on this page here, I can look at a few different things. I can see who's my end customer, their domain, how many Azure subscriptions that they're running, and what kind of license type they have. It also calls out if they've got a 365 account and licensing set up. And then I can see their consumption, where it's at, what kind of security they're using, and then kind of their risk levels. If I pop that filter off real quick, right, I can see all 6 of my customers and I can kind of sort and filter. I can export this view and I can do a couple of things. Like I can look at it and search by customer.
Sorry to cut you off, Matt. Can you go back one screen back here? So it says no security, but it's medium risk 55%.
Yes. That's because they do have some policies configured in that account. And so I was saying earlier, the risk level is an inverse of the secure score. So this is a good example of a partner that's gone in, done some configurations with the end user, but did never turn MFA on.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay.
That's why we flagged, that's a good call out. And that's why we flagged that and made that MFA configuration specifically a column here.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So on that note, right, there's a couple things I can do here as well, as I can go in and filter actually and see all of my customers, right, for example, that don't have security configured. So these are ones, I need to save that view. I can go in and look at all of my customers that have no security. And see here, right? Like you called out, this one doesn't have any security, but they're a medium. So if you're a partner, there's a few different ways that you want to look at this. So one thing I can notice right off the bat here, I did set up the demo, so I know this, but we see this in our UXD sessions with partners. These guys, Fidel and Evergreen, are paying for P1 licensing for their users, but they're not using the features and benefits of it, like we were mentioning earlier. So let's look at like what it's like if I want to dive into that for Fidel. So before I go have that conversation with them, I can drill into Fidel's environment and get an idea of, what all are they facing as threats, as well as what they've got configured already. So right off the bat, again, I see no security. I see that they have Office 365. This one's a good call out. They're not using cost management and budget alerts. So if I do rack up a $300,000 bill on this, I'm not going to know until I get the invoice. So this is a really good one to know off the bat. That's kind of like our greatest hits, is things that you should pay attention to. And then I can also see this account's secure score over time. So like I mentioned, I cheated a little bit and I did turn off MFA. But you can see that as a partner, right? I'm seeing a decline and increases of secure score over time, and that's due to the settings and policies being configured. So I know I can go look at that account, see what changes have taken place before I have that conversation with them, and maybe ask the very fun question of, hey team, why did we turn off MFA multiple times in the environment, and understand like what's the challenge with MFA, and that'll kind of lead you to adapting a conditional access policy. So where some big differences between our portal and some others, right, is the settings page actually. So we mentioned earlier, we built a solution that was called SMB Fraud Defense. This covers configurations and settings under MFA. Lots of things around Microsoft 365 policies and rules, things around budgets, access, and then also like some authentication policies. In an ideal world, you'd go turn everything on, but we know that that's not the case in a lot of situations. You can't apply blanket policies to all users in all situations. So I can come in here and do some really specific things. I can go in and I can set security defaults for that customer. Or I can configure a conditional access policy for that customer, which if you didn't notice, I always recommend conditional access. And we kind of set up a few things that people don't always think about, right? So first one being, I can set geo restrictions here. So I maybe, for example, I got this cached from a session earlier. I can set geo restrictions here, and maybe if I'm doing business just in the United States, right, I might want to geo restrict all IPs to be originating from the United States. I can turn on MFA for all users in the environment. I can require MFA for all management actions in the environment, right? Things like blocking legacy authentication, compliance requirements for the devices, and then I can also block things for apps. We've seen a lot of partners that have the old service account running with legacy auth, managing things like Power Apps or flows, things like that. With some of the upcoming changes from Microsoft on them, they've been trying for years to get rid of legacy auth, but because there's a lot of things running on it, they're kind of slow rolling while their enforcement, but eventually that's going to happen. So that's something that we need to consider. And then if I need to, I can also create an exclusion group and then select my recipients within that group, right? So for this one, for example, this has already picked up my test group that I created before when I deployed this, and I can also exempt them out of some of these policies. Going into Microsoft 365, right? Blocking all outbound forwarding, right? So I can't just dump my inbox and all my accounts, because that's a common thing. Great way to find usernames and passwords, unfortunately, because a lot of people still send that stuff in email. And then some stuff around like my DNS settings, right? And so this is something you don't want to mess with if you don't really understand what you're doing there. But if you want to, we flag what's your current DNS settings, and you can go in and make those changes on your own. Another thing to consider is the budgets, right? We always recommend creating a budget called like our, we can call it panic button or whatever we want to call it. But if I don't ever want to get to a place where I'm over $50,000 a month or euros, depending on where you're at, I need to take those spaces out, right? And I can set alerts on like, where's that notification threshold going to hit when I'm at 50%, 100%, 20%, and we can put in my email here. And we can go for our recipients. Actually, I need to go for, I messed up here. I don't remember the username off the account. So let's see if that works when I type it out. Yeah. So you'll be able to set the budget for that user and the environment. I'll need to find out why we can cut part of this, I'm assuming, but
Yeah.
I need to find out why that's not pulling.
Is there an option to send a text message? Or is it
this
something
portal,
on?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is something that you can configure directly in the Azure portal to notify via SMS alerts.
Yeah, cool.
Jumping into policies, right? This is where we also do like resource restriction policies. If I'm not running a GPU workload in my customer, right, there's no reason for anyone to be able to deploy a GPU workload. And so this is where we want to set some restrictions on things like high performance CPU for like batch compute and processes like that. This will prevent those things. So let's say that I have a scenario where I have a password leak. I happen to have one of my users that's in an exclusion group for whatever reason that has rights to deploy a VM. If someone goes and just runs that silly little script, it's going to fail when it tries to hit a GPU-enabled VM, and it's not going to let them proceed with that. That'll also prevent like the batch computes and the higher ones. So if I get damage and I do have a breach, the costs are going to be much lower than they would be if I didn't do that. The other big one that we saw a lot of people on, I want to restrict down to the regions I have resources in, right? So we pull those in for you. I have resources in US East 1 and 2. You don't want to allow quota for VM and GPU in all of the Azure data centers globally. So what we do here is an exclusion policy where we're going to only allow these two that will wildcard for you, and then everything else is going to get denied when it gets attempted. So if I want to try and deploy a VM in East Europe or in the EU data centers, it'll fail it because I have a policy preventing that from happening. And then a couple of things with anti-malware for if you're running Windows Server extensions, and then HTTP, requiring HTTPS on web apps, which are just good hygiene practices you should do in general. We threw them in there because a couple of people wanted the policies as well. So those are good ones. And then lastly, from a policies perspective, right, is our auth policies. So we have a couple of things here around smart lockout. Some people, this is a controversial one. Allowing passwords to never expire. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, depends on your use case, your situation, and your personal preferences. So we allow the option in there. I personally create more secure passwords when they don't expire all the time. And then, when you get one that is going to expire or rotate every 90 days, and you got to do goofy ones and tracking it, right? Just kind of up to your personal preferences. Then we also have a couple things with banned password lists. So in addition to the Microsoft banned passwords list that you get, which is really good, it'll ban things like password or admin being used. We also recommend banning stuff that's like company. So like if I have a demo environment called, the cat's pajamas, go ahead and ban the name of that thing in the environment and prevent it from actually being used as a password. And then finally, a couple of MFA settings around the application name, geographic location when you get the push notification. We got some feedback from partners on this that, MFA spamming was a thing. So this will actually tell you where the location is, so you don't think it's one of your, I have a server re-authenticating, or, it's, I have my web browser's re-authenticating. And then also allowing FIDO2 and passwordless, right? So this is one you may want to put a little bit more planning into, but we have a couple partners that standardize their FIDO setup, so we allow them to configure that when they do the templatized deployments and hit that for their customers.
So this looks like it's going to go a long way as far as that getting partners to start down that security journey. One of the things I have in my experience when it comes to approaching partners who have a bad security baseline is that they get overwhelmed, right? They're like, well, where do we start? How do we evaluate this? Look, I get it. I get the fact that we're unsecure.
Yeah.
I don't know where to begin. And so having a tool like this, I think, is important. Which brings a good question, Matt. How, if you had somebody like that, it's like, look, we agree that we're unsecure. I don't know where to start. Well, how does this tool help them make that decision? Because there's a lot of information there. Yeah.
There is, right? And so right now you need to go in and do these toggles and these configurations, and we kind of cover the areas you should be researching and reading. And so
Gotcha.
from a partner perspective, right, if I dedicate about an hour and a half, 2 hours of time and go through and just like do a little bit, I hate I'm going to say this, but go chat GPT it or run it in Gemini,
There
right?
you go.
You can find out about these policies really
Right.
quickly and what they are, right? At a bare minimum, you should be hitting the security type. You should be setting budgets and policies, right? Maybe you don't need to get into DNS and all this stuff, but just those top ones that we have in there kind of cover the front door.
Right.
Our next release we're doing, again, based on partner feedback, it was like, hey, can you just give me like a high, medium, and low template for like, I want to shut everything off, I want to shut some stuff off, and I want to shut the bare minimum off. So the next version and release that we have is going to allow you to use those templates, and then you can also save it and customize it yourself. So if I want to have a build for everybody that's got a P2 license in my environments, I'll be able to do that deployment one time and save it, and then I can just go apply it to those other 5 customers in my my stable that have a P2 license.
Nice. Yeah, and that's great to have that ability to look at the risk appetite and determine what's right for that particular customer. So partner, that's excellent, because not all customers are going to have that same idea. Like, well, yeah, we want to be most secure. That's great, but our risk appetite isn't that big. We have X product where we're not worried about being compromised, I guess. But anyways,
That's real world.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So, but I think this is a great way to do that. I also think it has flexibility. A lot of times, what I think security guys forget, and I'm including this from time to time, is that security doesn't work for business. Security should work for business and not business working for security is what I meant to say. So, this is a great tool to help with that. So when something dynamic happens in the business that they're looking for, they're changing goals or some other technology is coming online that seriously changes how they're doing business. This is another great tool, I think, on how to assess how that's all going to look. In that situation, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but if we had somebody that's like, look, we're retooling, can this tool be used to help plan that, or is it's something that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely can, right? Like what this is and what this isn't, right?
Right.
This is a way for you to set a baseline in all your customers and have standardization that normally would require a lot of manual work and setup.
Right.
If a partner wants to retool and they're going to go to an actual like full vendor that does like cloud application security and manages these type of environments from a third party, you're going to get a lot more mileage out of that. But the operational costs, overhead, and commitment that you're going to have to invest to do that is going to be pretty significant. So like if you want to start offering a security practice, if you want to start having sessions with your customers just around security, and having those consults, right? Like maybe even like a quarterly, like, hey, we're going to do a CTO discussion and we're going to review this portal. We're going to look at your settings. We're going to talk about your score over time and kind of what's next. This could be your first 2 or 3 quarters worth of meetings is literally just using this portal as you build that business and that practice.
Right. Yeah. And then another thing too, you were talking about that. I was like, well, this also helps to address issues when you're looking at having audits for any kind of compliance. If you're having internal audits if you're doing, say, a risk assessment, whether it's external or internal, all of these kind of things, this is just going to help all the way around. So excellent. I know that there are some types of tools like this in, say, other security specific tools like Defender for Cloud and all that, but it doesn't address everything that you're bringing together here. So this is an excellent tool, I think, and a great start for what your vision here is to do.
So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. And like our Greg, our long-term vision for this is we're going to continue to add additional features, templates, and standardization to the portal. But based on partner feedback, we've had a couple requests for third-party integrations and tooling that we're looking at and exploring. We've got a lot of requests.
Yeah, I could see how something like this could be used in like my specialty, Sentinel, right? How bringing some of these alerts, bringing this information in and generating alerts on something like this would be interesting. So yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Question for you. With TD SYNNEX, right? Keep any of the end customer, well, obviously we have to present the end customer's information, but a concern that some partners might come up with is, hey, you know what, this is my customer. You shouldn't be looking at my customers, right? Obviously, with that risk comes the reward of, hey, no, of us telling the partner, your customers are vulnerable. But is there a way for TD SYNNEX to ensure the security of the data that we present here?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like we do standard encryption policies and rules on these databases. Everything like that is from a secure standpoint. The other piece too is, right, you need to turn this on. So we don't just have generic access where we can read these things. There's a permissions that needs to be set up for us to be able to have read permissions, for example. So like if you want to find out like what do I look like? What's the challenge right now? Maybe you don't want to deploy just yet. Versus write permissions. And so it's up to a partner to manage that. So for example, if I want to look at one end customer, I'll set up the appropriate GDAP permissions through the platform that let me do that. I can go in and do a deployment. And then when I'm done with it, I can revert that back to just read permissions, or I can just clear everything out completely, right? So that it's not continuously being read.
Gotcha.
And then another thing to call out is like the data that we have in here, we use live API calls to pull this stuff. So this isn't all stored somewhere where it's all nice and easy to see, right? We've got quite a big handler on the back end that does a lot of concurrent calls to Microsoft, using a few different API endpoints and tools to pull this stuff, because I wish everything in here was available via API endpoint, but it's not. So we had to get pretty creative on some of the back end stuff. So it's a nice system. But yeah, it's a security portal. We've obviously built it with security in mind.
Oh, awesome. That's reassuring.
Yeah.
Now, so Matt, what does the future look like for this tool? Where, if we were talking a couple years down the road, where do you see this going?
So our goal is to expand this to both Amazon and Google as well. I don't know exactly what that'll look like, but it'll be a similar approach for Amazon and Google, with being able to do generic templated deployments around kind of the most important pieces of securing yourself. We additionally want to start to include security audits in this, not in the sense of like we're going to go like ping around your VM and start doing pen testing, but more checking and seeing like you should be able to pick a couple different compliance standards. You should be able to look at CISA, OWASP, and see how you rank, how you stack up, and generate reports for your end customer on how they sit against that. That's a feature we've heard from a lot of partners. We're still exploring some of the technical complexity with being able to just do that out of the box, but I would say within the next 2 years, it's very realistic. I don't know about the next quarter, but that's definitely the route we're going towards.
Nice.
Would it be possible? Well, not so much around audits and what have you, but would it be possible to have features? Maybe you have this planned already in your roadmap, that features and reports that will help partners and customers achieve cyber insurance.
That's come up as well in addition to OWASP and then the CISA requests. Let me actually show. So this is nothing groundbreaking right now, but the way it works kind of is. So this recommended products page is our first attempt at making recommendations based on configuration. So like where we want to go long term is like, it's one thing if everybody you get an email that says, hey, MFA is really important. You guys should buy, Azure P1, P2, or, this MFA tool or ID or this or that, right? That's all nice outbound marketing. What we're going towards is we want to build a recommendations engine based on the configuration. So for example, we see that this partner or this end customer does not have MFA configured. We were able to recommend Microsoft native and third-party products that are purchasable through the platform to solve that problem. Same thing with a low secure score. We have a few other key points that we're starting with, which is like if you have workloads running, but you don't have any kind of endpoint protection, we don't see any kind of cloud app protection, we'll make recommendations there. Where we want this to go is to be an actual assessment report you can generate for your end customer that covers what are your security risks, what products can you buy to close those gaps, what do you need to buy or implement to meet that OWASP or meet that CISA piece, covering costing for those things, recommending some things for the partner around like what does that services opportunity look like, But also, Danny, we can put other things in there, like what do these major cyber insurance provider requirements look like and how far away are you from meeting them? If you want to achieve this level of specialization or certification in security, this is what you need to have implemented at this customer. So this kind of is going to become our reporting and analytics page for SecOps that'll give them like customizable, exportable details for things like what you just mentioned.
Gotcha. Now,
I'm talking art of the possible right now, but that's the direction we're going in.
Well, when Greg started asking about the future, I thought it's probably going to be somewhere in the hopefully in the near future, because obviously cyber insurance is a growing concern for many organizations out there.
Turn that MFA on if you don't want an insane premium.
There you go. Was it 99% of a lot of these issues that occur can be prevented with just turning on something basic like MFA?
Yeah.
So.
And here is maybe another question / idea. You showed earlier the licenses that customers already have, right? The 365 and what have you. Is it possible to show partners when the licenses of the customers are about to expire and they need to either renew, cancel, or upgrade?
I think there's a renewal page in the e-commerce platform, but I'm not familiar enough with where it is to show it.
Gotcha. Okay.
I can, if we're gonna, let me look real quick, and then let me see if I can find it, and then we can re-ask the question. Because I don't know which one they actually have license under for this one. M365 now, NCE. Yeah. I don't think we'll be able to show that. There's like 1,700 test-in customers in here, and I have no idea which one has active licenses. So,
we'll wait.
yeah. Thanks.
4 hours later.
So, so that functionality is going to be on the StreamOne platform rather than the actual tool. Okay.
Yeah, so that's more like the renewals dashboard and things that they've got.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay, Greg. Any other questions, thoughts?
Well, I think that this is an excellent adjunct to whatever security. So, for example, like Microsoft, right? If I'm a Microsoft shop and I have these security tools that do some of this for my Microsoft environment, this is excellent to help look at the entire environment, stepping away from Microsoft just a little bit, right? So it's exactly what I think is needed, and it's an opportunity for those organizations really to, again, start taking that journey, start down that maturity pathway to get to be more secure. And so I'm just really impressed, Matt. I got to tell you, it's a great looking tool. It doesn't overwhelm. A lot of these tools that I've seen in the past, they're great. The tech stack is amazing. However, they are a little overwhelming, right? But this isn't that. This is very, presents it nicely, and it'll help to translate that, especially when security guys have to explain this for, say, something like funding, right? Yeah. If I need a P1 license, well, how am I going to explain this, right? Yeah. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard this. Say it to me in English. Right?
Money. Yeah, you spend more money later if you don't buy this now.
Exactly. Yeah. I had a conversation yesterday with a partner and an end client. They were saying that, look, we just need to know how to explain this on how we're spending money in security. What does this mean about how are we adding value back to the business by doing this? And tools like this are excellent to do that. And again, because it's simple, right to the point, and I think it steps away from what already is there, but not in a way that is disruptive. It really does help. So great job, Matt. You and your team have done excellent work here, and I think the quicker we can get this online to all of our customers, the better off it'll be.
Thank you. Yeah, so right now we're running what we're calling our private preview. So any partners that want to participate, we'll manually turn this on for them so it's visible in the platform. We'll do additional training. They get technical documentation, and then we're here for kind of like a white glove support. So if they need help doing a deployment, Our only ask is that we get 30 minutes to an hour of their time, and we go through a UXD session where we have them actually bring in whoever is going to be using it, go through a few exercises. We look at their customer base, ask them some questions, and really the goal is to focus on kind of understanding like what the partners need, how we're presenting the information, and making sure that what we're putting in here is of value for them. So
Excellent.
that's a good one. We're going to be doing that through roughly the end of March, beginning of April, just depending on a couple of other enhancements that we do before turning it on general availability for everybody.
Excellent.
And if a partner wants to join, I guess they can reach out to their TD SYNNEX rep, or they can reach out
Correct.
to danny.frankel@tdsynnex.com or matt.hamilton@tdsynnex.com. Greg, we're going to leave you out of that
Don't
picture.
reach out to me. I don't know anything.
Is that going to, two questions maybe before we wrap up. Is that going to cost anything to the partner or the end customers?
It's not, no. So for right now, we're providing this for free. That's the plan in the foreseeable future as we continue to add different enhancements. There'll be a couple different things that we'll start charging for around reporting and analytics. But yeah, for now, no cost to partners.
Okay, and who would you recommend be the person looking at this? Because some of the, I would say, SMB partners, right? They're not, especially those who are not big on security, right? Would usually use the StreamOne platform, the two platforms. I guess it would either be salespeople or it would be procurement people. That kind of, okay, I have a request from a customer to buy something, right? So I'm going to go into StreamOne. Those people would not usually be the security folks, right? So
Correct.
who would you recommend? Would you recommend for an SMB partner to have access to this specific tool?
If they've got a security person, that's definitely the right persona. If they don't, typically whoever does your account setup, like engineering wise, sets up users, sets up password reset, sets up like email. Those are going to be the right personas because it's going to be somebody who's familiar enough with Microsoft that they're going to understand what they're doing in here to some degree, but that if they're not, they can do some quick reading and research and understand those policies. That's definitely the persona I would shoot for. On the sales note, though, I mean, as we saw, there's a lot of goodies in here for salespeople to be able to go look at, like, who do I need to go sell P1 and P2 to? So that's a good combination for the engineering or the sales team to get together and say, hey, what's some bullet points, like Greg mentioned? What do I say to these people on the cost and why they need to buy it?
Turn it in from security speak to English. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Spanish or whatever language they want it into.
Final question, and that's really more on a personal note, Matt. Would you mind sharing an interesting, with our audience, an interesting fact about you?
Here comes the grilling.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably the toughest question we'll ever ask you today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's interesting. I'm from Tampa, Florida originally, and I'm actually based in Barcelona now, and I moved here about 3 years ago. So I guess that's pretty interesting.
It is interesting. I love Barcelona. It's a beautiful city, and I wish I'd be able to go there again in the near future.
It's nice. I like it. Come on over.
There you go. You know what? If you're paying for it, I'm coming. No, I'm joking. Well, I guess that's our time for the day. So thanks for tuning in to Cyber Wise Guys, because staying in is staying secure means staying smart, right? And until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay cyber wise. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.